Okay, perfect. Just a second. Getting a bit of feedback on my end. There we go. All right, perfect. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Patrick Gurney. I am an AmeriCorps member from Conservation Nebraska with Conservation Nebraska's Common Ground program. Nebraska's mission is to protect our state's natural legacy by educating the public, supporting communities, and increasing civic engagement. The the Common Ground program educates Nebraskans across the state about conservation issues facing their communities, and it provides them with tools they need to improve their local environments. We do this through locally led education efforts and community engagement to address local conservation concerns. Now, before we get into the presentation, just a few procedures to go over. Please be aware that by default, all audience members' cameras and mics will be off. This way, we won't be distracting the presenter as he presents. And after the presentation, we will have a 10 to 15 minute Q&A section during which there will be a brief survey that won't take more than 2 minutes to complete, which is about the presentation and Conservation Nebraska, which we really appreciate you taking the time to complete. And with that, I'll let the speaker introduce himself. Please welcome today Chad Podolak from Nebraska Public Power District.
Yeah, well, thank you, Patrick. I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you folks today. I know it's a really nice day. Patrick and I were talking about, it's kind of time. We're due for this kind of weather. And so really appreciate everybody taking some time this afternoon or this evening to talk about what's going on at NPPD. I know the topic is residential battery energy storage, and we'll touch base a little bit on that. I'm by no means an expert, but I do have some information and some thoughts I'd like to share in that space. But I've been at NPPD for 27 years, in the industry about 29, and all in Nebraska, most of it at Nebraska Public Power District out of Columbus, which is our headquarters. And I've worked in a variety of roles, primarily in the customer service, energy efficiency, demand response, and as of late, and more on the wholesale sales and services side that we provide other utilities across the state of Nebraska. And so that's where I've been for the last 29 years. I've been awfully engaged in energy efficiency. I mean, at NPPD, we're awfully interested in helping people use as much energy as they need to, but use it as efficiently as they possibly can without wasting any. It's been a big area of focus for us for a really long time. But personally, I also have interest in the water, and I'm also on the Lower Loop NRD board out of Ord. That NRD goes from Columbus to Broken Bow. So I've enjoyed learning about Nebraska's opportunities in the energy and the water space, whether it's quality or quantity, and how that relates to Nebraskans and communities and ag in particular for quite some time. So that's a little bit of background from my perspective. I'll go to my next slide, I believe, if I can hit the right button here. Oh, too far. No, going. Okay, let's do it that way. So Public Power in Nebraska, if you're not familiar with Nebraska, we're really, really unique. We're actually the only state in the union that's all public power. And that's been a really, really big advantage. It's allowed us to really focus on what's unique in Nebraska, to do what we can to deliver on what's expected and what's important. And that really is around reliability, keeping the lights on day and night, extreme weathers, rates and rate stability to be able to help people use as much as their income for everything they want. And it kind of gets back to that energy efficiency piece so they don't waste electricity. Sustainability, we've been blessed to have access to a variety of different types of fuel types and resources to fuel the energy appetite, or at least the electrical energy appetite across Nebraska. This public power structure also gives us a voice around what's important to them, along with the partnerships. And I often joke, this recently a U.S. News and World Report listed Nebraska as the state with the most reliable power grid, the fifth lowest electric rates and access to a lot of renewables. And I think it's unique that we do that as a Midwest state with 2 million people and 6 million cattle type of thing. And so, we have a lot to be proud of this structure and what the value we're able to provide folks across Nebraska. All working in partnership, whether it's OPPD or LES or a rural power district or a little municipality in the state. We're all working together to do what we can for Nebraskans. Just a high level overview of NPPD. We have about 3,400 megawatts of generation. Just to give you a sense of scale, some of the towns that we serve, like Wahoo's about 25, or Wahoo's about 12, Seward's about 25, or North Platte's about 60. And just to give you a reference for what a megawatt is, as you might be familiar with what, general reference from a town perspective. So we have that amount of generation, a good share of it, a relatively high share is carbon free relative to other utilities throughout the country. And that's at about 58%, in part to one of the larger, due to our nuclear plant that's in the southeast part of the state. We set our summer peak back in 2023 at about 3,000 megawatts. One of the things that's unique, and we'll talk just a little bit about it, is we do have a lot of irrigation load control benefits. This allows us to avoid roughly a 600 megawatt power plant by working in partnership with our rural power districts and irrigators to help us manage the development of irrigated acres, at the same time managing the infrastructure that's used or needed to serve them. We'll talk a little bit about our load growth. Historically, it's been about less than 1% or 20 megawatts a year. We've had a huge uptick in load growth the last few years, and we're averaging about 150 megawatts a year as a recent year or two. Because of our generation mix and the diversity of our generation mix, we've been fortunate and blessed to have 8 years of no wholesale rate increase for the wholesale customers that buy power from NPPD. And it gives you a sense of what our average cents per kilowatt hour are across from the towns that NPPD serves. NPPD is about 2/3 wholesale sales to about 30 rural power districts and 23 rural power districts and a number of municipals. And then we have 81 towns that we serve at retail. So it gives you a little sense of where our energy goes. Gives you a little sense of scale. We're in 84 of the 93 counties, 94,000 residential customers. Just a high level overview. Our vision is, our mission is to safely generate and deliver reliable, low cost, sustainable energy and related services and outstanding customer service. So it gives you a little sense overview of NPPD from a background perspective. This gives you a flavor for the diversity. We have coal plants, we have a nuclear plant, we have natural gas plants, we have hydro facilities, we have wind facilities, we have renewable facilities. We really try to leverage everything we can in Nebraska from a fuel perspective. And if it makes sense and it provides value, we're likely to pursue it to deliver on what our customers want from a reliability and a rates and a sustainability perspective. Again, 58% carbon free, which is really unique. That's a really high percentage of our energy mix is carbon free generation. Regarding our costs, this is a benchmark that we reference of rural power districts, about 800 of them across the country. And we benchmark, we compare our costs to others in the industry. And right now we're at the 16th percentile. So again, it just goes to show we're really, really extremely low costs in Nebraska relative to other parts of the country, which is a lion's share and due to our public power structure and our diverse generation fleet. A lot of this, our costs and our reliability, really led to an influx of new loads interested in locating in Nebraska. If you can imagine a Google search and you searched high reliability, which recently we're in that category as top notch, and low costs, we're showing up on people's radars for development and expansion. So much so that we really had to sit down and work with our customers to put together a process that allows us to make sure that we can expand and serve loads across Nebraska in a way that's responsible. And so we put together a new load queue process, really with the goal of balancing what's required to serve these new loads from an electrical standpoint, from a delivery standpoint, and also from a generation standpoint. And we want to make sure we're able to grow and make those investments in a way that allow those developing industries and customers to also proceed in a similar timeline. And we really want to do it in a way that we can sort those that are serious and those that are just out kind of kicking tires, so that when we make our investments, and as you can imagine, we're talking billions of dollars of investments in transmission and generation, we're able to, couple billion, we're able to do that in a way with confidence that the customers that are knocking on the door are serious and they need us to make those investments. Otherwise, it gets put on the back of existing ratepayers and Nebraskans, which is a big area of focus for us. As a cost-based utility, we don't have anybody else to manage or absorb that risk for us. So that's a big area of focus with the new load growth. Some of the industries that we're seeing the new load growth in is hydrogen, ethanol, some data center and cryptos, ag processing, food processing. But there is a good share of diversity of some of this large load growth that we're seeing across Nebraska. This is the new load queue process. Again, it really allows a very transparent process for developers to see what is it going to take for us to be served in Nebraska, what's required, and there's a lot of upfront requirements on asked of them, whether it's for the transmission delivery facilities or whether it's for the generation facilities to serve them. There's securities and dollars up front to help us have the confidence we need that they're serious and that we should be moving forward as well. I mentioned a little bit about our demand waiver program. This is a program that we have administered with our rural power districts across Nebraska to manage the impact and the timing of irrigation load so that we can avoid generation in lieu and work in partnership with these producers so that when we're seeing peaks on our system, we're anticipating high loads in the summer on our system, that we send them a signal and we work with them to where they shut off or they curtail or they allow us to curtail their irrigation wells and really switch or shift that usage from on-peak periods to off-peak periods. It's really truly one of the most unique programs in the country, delivering hundreds of megawatts of demand response, really to the envy of any other state or utility as that goes. Because this is the effect of that. This kind of shows you on a typical summer day, by working in partnership with our producers and irrigators across Nebraska, the effect that we can have in that partnership as it relates to managing our peaks and impacting and influencing the infrastructure that's required to serve them. We can't discriminate, right? So we have to serve anybody that wants service. Sometimes it takes us a little time to put in the facilities, but we can't say no as statutes, which is fine. We're willing to do that, but this is an example of where we can work in concert with customers and do it in a way that really provides value to them because they can get a discounted rate for allowing load control, and all ratepayers benefit by not having the equivalent of a 600 megawatt power plant and the ongoing annual O&M costs that go with that. So demand response has been a really, really big program for us for a lot of years. There's been a real focus on smart energy efficiency, beneficial electrification, all in the interest of helping customers use energy as efficiently as they possibly can. We want them to use as much energy as they need to use and no more to be profitable, successful, or comfortable. And so we've invested literally millions of dollars over 15-ish years, probably at least by now, in our energy efficiency incentive programs in the residential, commercial, industrial, and ag space to really do that, to help them not waste electricity. So we also have a significant investment in beneficial electrification. That's really focused on on those loads that are fossil fuel based today and converting them over to electricity fueled or based. We believe with our carbon footprint today, with 58% being carbon free, there's a real positive impact from a carbon perspective by converting those loads from fossil fuel over to electricity, whether it's a vehicle and we're dealing with tailpipe emissions, or a diesel or natural gas pivot, or well on an irrigation pivot, converting that to electric, or any other beneficial electrification opportunities. We have investments available for, incentives available for those actions so that we can have that positive impact on the carbon footprint. This just gives you a sense of, again, I talk about a town like Seward's 25 megawatts and a town like North Platte's 60-ish megawatts. This gives you an equivalent perspective of how many megawatts we're able to control off during our peaks through our irrigation load control program. It's really a very unique, as I mentioned, it's a very, very unique partnership of public power and producers. Obviously, our key sector in the state being ag, that's a real positive and success story. I know this topic's to talk about batteries. I just wanted to share with you, we have up in Norfolk, we have on the west end of Norfolk, we have an 8.5 megawatt solar facility with a 1 megawatt, roughly 2 megawatt hour battery storage facility there that we've had in operation for a couple of years now already. Really designed to get our feet wet in the battery storage technology on the utility scale and see how we can leverage that in a way that brings value and benefits to the grid from a reliability and stability perspective, and also from a financial perspective to the extent we can save money or find revenue streams for that type of a resource. In the news, you can't hardly, it's hard to ignore the concerns about lithium and fire. And so this is just a slide to recognize there's a substantial system in place to deal with any kind of fire-related issues. Just a snapshot of the dashboard that just gives you a perspective of the various types of things that we're able to monitor and the strategies that we're able to put in place to leverage this asset in a way that again, provides that grid reliability or stability perspective, and also the financial benefits of it. Throughout this process, we've learned a lot. And for folks that are interested in batteries, this is one experience that we're having. It's been a learning curve. We've learned a lot. There's probably a lot that we would do different. It's probably not as financially attractive as we initially had thought it would be. But it's an ongoing effort to learn and grow and try to maximize that investment the best that we possibly can. This just gives you a little bit of a diagram of how it's configured, with a solar project in the upper left, the battery in the lower left, with the transformer, the disconnect protection, the meter, before you get back to the electric utility system. And it's really important to recognize with battery or energy storage or renewables or a backup generator or anything, and we'll talk about it, but having the right equipment in place and understanding what's involved is always beneficial. This is a diagram on a residential perspective with solar, assumed to be solar on the roof, with a Tesla Powerwall and the inverters and some protection equipment in place from an interconnection perspective. So when we talk residential energy storage from the utility side, I think it's really important to understand safety is really always going to be our number one care about, whether that's safety for the customer that's installing it, on how they configure it, and really structure it so that it's fail-proof. And by that I mean that the owner of the house is still safe, even if the original person that installed it or put it in isn't the current owner or user of the house, so that it's safe for the next folks that occupy that house. So safety from safety from a customer's perspective, backfeeding on in the grid from a lineman perspective, or just general public safety is always NPPD or public power's number one item to understand and manage above all. And I'd really encourage you to just reach out to your local utility to ensure that proper interconnection if you're considering energy storage at your residence or even your business, because it's not complicated, but there are ways to not do it safely. And having the right conversations with your local power district will help ensure that you have an installation that you know is safe for not only you, but for the others that are involved with it down the road. The other thing is public power, I think sometimes it gets a little bit maybe of a bad rap. And public power isn't in the business of prohibiting installations. We just want to make sure it's safe. There's also laws around net metering that say we will ignore the cost shift concerns up to a certain point of energy sales by utility, by law that's been passed with the net metering program. And it's basically, the net metering program is basically to say, we're willing to accept a certain amount of cost shift, and anything beyond that, we're not gonna prohibit, we're just gonna compensate that excess generation that goes back onto the grid in a different way. So that the owners or those that are interested in it can still get compensation, but it would be handled differently. All in the interest of managing the cost shift to likely non-participants who aren't using or aren't benefiting from or participating in a renewable or energy storage project. Often many who might even be perhaps low income is of interest in the impact to them, along with the interconnection from a safety perspective. Obviously, the benefits of energy storage is to provide some backup power for periods of time with that proper installation, the environmental benefits, and be able to store excess renewable generation on site. I will go back to the net metering. If customers are able to utilize net metering, the grid actually acts as a battery. So if you have excess energy, it goes on the grid, you get a credit, you get to use it to offset future consumption that month, perhaps. And so with net metering, it changes the value proposition, at least in my mind, as it relates to energy storage, because net metering, you kind of use the grid as your battery backup or your credit opportunity, if you will. So my last slide, just in summary, again, public power in Nebraska is really unique. Lots of new loads, significant investments in transmission and generation to meet these new loads and their expectations. And it's really an all hands on deck for ways to serve loads. And so we're looking at everything from new generation to renewables, the battery storage on the utility scale. We're looking at demand response. We're looking at energy efficiency. We're looking at everything we can possibly consider that makes sense for our customers. And we're pursuing them until they don't make sense for us, right? Or there's not interest from customers in pursuing, so that we can continue to serve today's loads and tomorrow's loads as reliably as we always have, as low cost as we have, with the rate stability that people appreciate, and then also with the sustainability and environmental perspectives that are important to all of us. Residential renewables and storage have a role in that space, in that future space. The Public Power Partner is a great place to start and get helpful information and direction so that we can ensure you can be ensured the interconnection is done right and everybody is safe. And it really does set the stage that we do believe there's going to be technology advancements that really open the door in energy storage or renewables or smart technologies, smart thermostats. All of these lead us to a place where we need to continue to work together to explore and solve or find a way to say yes, so that we can help end-use customers do what they want to do and do it in a way that addresses and accomplishes their goals. So really, that's what I had, Patrick, from a slide deck. And I apologize if I kind of ran through it and maybe it wasn't as much energy storage as you had hoped. But I do think it gives you, hopefully it gives you some sense for some of the key or the big things that are going on, at least with Nebraska Public Power District in Nebraska. and gives you some sense of the different things that we have going on with a variety of programs that we have for available for end use customers to accomplish things in the space of conservation and using electricity in particular in new ways that make sense to folks. So with that, I guess I'll open it up for questions if anybody has any.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you, Chad. Very informing. We do have a few questions already. The first question is, does NPPD offer any programs or incentives for homeowners installing a system, a battery storage system?
Today, we do not. We have talked about doing a pilot program where we work to learn, and really for us, at least at NPPD, like I said, we have a utility scale battery up in Norfolk. We're pursuing another utility scale battery in the south or south central part of the state. But those are utility scale, and we're really just trying to get, we think they make sense. We're pursuing them to learn, find out how to better utilize them. On the residential side, we've had similar discussions around should we look for opportunities to pilot some stuff and find some customers where we can walk in concert and learn together. But so far, it's just been a discussion about that. We don't have anything today for a residential battery storage program today.
Okay, thank you. Another question. How much of NPPD's power generation is sent to other states?
So the way it works in Nebraska, we are part of the three utilities in Nebraska. Well, there's Lincoln Electric System, OPPD, Omaha Public Power District, Municipal Energy Agency of Nebraska is headquartered out of Lincoln. And then there's a utility out of Colorado there's other rurals in the western part of the state. We're all part of, for the most part, we're all part of Southwest Power Pool. And by that, it means you have to show on an annual basis, and then secondly, you have to show on a daily basis that you have enough generation to serve your load, that you have access, you have control of, plus what they call planning reserve margins. And so today we have let's just say we have a 3,000 megawatt peak. We have to prove to Southwest Power Pool that we have 3,000 megawatts plus the 17% planning reserve margins, which basically ensures we have enough generation that we have to serve our load in Nebraska. Now, the reality is we're all part of a big transmission grid. So when you produce an electron, you don't really know where it goes. It's kind of like water goes to the path of least resistance. But we do have all of our generation is in place to serve our load in Nebraska. We do not have any generation that exists for sales, solely for sale, or that exists to serve loads that are not in Nebraska. So I can't guarantee the electrons stay in Nebraska because it's a transmission system that doesn't have boundaries, but our investments are on generation in Nebraska for Nebraskans. At the end of the day, the Southwest Power Pool dispatches the least cost resources or generators. And we've, over the years, have been rewarded because they view our generation as really low cost and reliable. And so to the extent we can generate more than what our Nebraska load needs and requires, then we can take those margins that we're making from from these sales, perhaps elsewhere, and bring them back to our customers. It might be sales to another Nebraska utility. You just really don't necessarily know off the transmission system. So long story short, we have all of our generation in Nebraskans to serve Nebraskans and benefit Nebraskans. That's really why we exist, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Next question is asking if you can elaborate on why you said the financial returns were not as good as expected for the Norfolk battery.
I'm not that close to it. I think we learned a lot as it relates to how to charge, how to discharge. We learned about the impact of the charging status or state whether it's fully charged or not charged, and the impact that might have on warranty. I think we learned some things as it relates to maintenance. I think we learned some things as it relates to how to plan to use it. So I'm not that close to it, but those are the kinds of things that I heard. All learning experiences, and I think they're all right for things that can be approved upon, so that the financials are there. If they're not, I should probably clarify. I can't say for sure it's not as financially attractive as we had hoped. I just heard that it's been a learning curve, and we continue to learn as we go forward.
Okay, next question is asking if you know the typical lifespan of a home system.
I don't. I can't answer that. I apologize. I would
Okay,
suspect the battery vendors, the Teslas of the world, and whoever else is selling batteries would have some insights on that, based on what kind of warranties they have and actual field experience.
all right, no problem. Thank you. Next question is asking, what is the outlook for hydroelectric power NPPD, especially after the decommission of the Spencer Dam? And does NPPD want to invest any further in hydroelectric?
We would love to have more hydro. Hydro is a really, really great generation resource because it's really dispatchable, right? You're operating gates that impacts the generation, and it's very, very friendly for ramping and moving around from full to no output. Probably one of the best technologies out there. And so we would love to have more hydro generation. The hydro generation that we have is very valuable. Obviously, the Spencer was a catastrophic event. I don't know what our appetite. I think our appetite would be strong. I don't know what the possibility is for new hydro or significant hydro across Nebraska. I think there's a lot of environmental aspects that would need to be understood. But in general, hydro is a really, really good resource. You look at the northwest part of the country, where they have a lot of hydro, they have really, really low energy costs, and it's because it's a really, really valuable type of a way of generating electricity. We do not have plans today to add any hydro that I'm aware of in Nebraska.
All right.
Even though we have more miles of river than any other state, as I understand it, which makes us kind of cool.
Sorry to interrupt you there. I can move on to the next question.
Sure.
Does NPPD support privately developed utility scale energy storage resources?
We don't discourage any type of generation resource as long as it's legal and it's interconnected correctly. That's been our forefront is the interconnection and large scale utility scale generation. I'm no expert, but I believe it has to be there's some ownership requirements as statutes related to statutes that I think come into play.
Okay, thank you. Next question is NPPD developing any new utility scale energy resources?
We are adding new utility scale resources. We are doing a large battery in the southern part of the state. We're pursuing through some recent board management decisions, some combustion turbines, some reciprocating internal combustion engines. We're seriously exploring renewable energy, some large renewable energy projects, all in the interest of serving our load growth that we're expecting. A lot of this comes back to what they call in the industry accredited capacity. So I mentioned if we're 3,000 megawatts of load, we have to have 3,000 megawatts plus 17% of what's called accredited capacity, which basically means that's generation that the industry can count on during extreme events. And so, you know, you have to, as a utility, you have to have enough of this accredited capacity. That's why we're leaning towards the natural gas combustion turbines and the natural gas reciprocating engines. It's where we're leaning towards batteries. Renewable projects have some accredited capacity. It often is discounted a noticeable amount, and so a large, you know, 100 megawatt solar might get you roughly 25 megawatts of capacity. 100 megawatts of wind might get you, again, roughly 15 megawatts of capacity. So it's that accredited capacity that we have to prove to the industry or Southwest Power Pool that we have available to keep the lights on during the extreme summer and during the extreme winter load conditions. And so we are pursuing everything that makes sense to do just that, keep the lights on and keep our rates as low as we possibly can, while still accomplishing our the sustainable aspects that are important.
Okay. Is NPPD oh, excuse me. That was the same question. An attendee heard that NPPD was looking for sites for small modular nuclear reactors and is wondering if you have any thoughts on NPPD's investment in nuclear energy generation.
Well, NPPD has a lot of interest in additional nuclear if and when it makes sense. And as you know, the legislature passed a bill recently that allowed us to look at sites across the state. I don't know the current status, but I think they're in the process of narrowing it down to a couple locations that are good candidates for small modular reactors. And again, these are modular. So in theory, they're built in modules and then brought on site and connected in series and in ways that allows you to stack and go from, you know, 20 megawatts to 40 to 60 to 80 and what have you type of thing. And the other area that's interest, as I understand it, not a subject matter expert by any means, that it's passive. By that I mean it's if it loses power, it's able to protect itself in a proper fashion. So the unique thing about NPPD is there's two public utilities that have nuclear licenses, and we in Nebraska are a utility that have one of those two out of about 20 different entities that have nuclear plant operation licenses. And so we're really set up well. If and when it makes sense, we're really set up well with our experience with Cooper Nuclear Station to expand and leverage small nuclear reactors, if that's the technology, in a way that's beneficial. But we will do that if and when it makes sense, right? It's got to make sense on a number of fronts: economics, safety, reliability, all the things that matter with that kind of a decision. But we're really set up well. And there's things that have happened in the last few years to position us to be towards the front end of that when it makes sense to bring the benefits of that technology to Nebraskans.
Okay, thank you. Looks like we have one more question. Had NPPD seen a significant increase in demand or unpredictable loads as we experience more severe season changes?
We are seeing a big uptick in new loads. There's lots of folks wanting to expand in Nebraska for, I'm sure, a lot of reasons outside of the electrical industry reasons, like water, or maybe some of the policies that encourage economic development. So we're not, the load is probably more stable than the grid, perhaps. I go back to Winter Storm Uri. The reality of Winter Storm Uri in 2021 is, when we talk about all these different types of fuels types, the electric utility, its whole purpose in life is to maintain 60 cycles of alternating current every second. And we do that by throttling up generation when people are turning loads on, and throttling generation back when people turn off loads. And all of this is done nearly instantaneously. And so that is our challenge as electric utilities, is to always maintain that balance so that we have that type of 60 cycles per second grid reliability. When we get into these extreme weather events like Winter Storm Uri, and power plants, due to the extreme weathers, can't run or don't start or can't stay online, or transmission lines have unplanned outages, other generation has to respond, right? You trip a generator like that, something's got to bounce on like that. And so that gets back to the whole purpose and benefit and need for dispatchable generation, something that you have a throttle on. And because back in 2021, I haven't seen any official numbers, but I've heard rough numbers of, there's about 72 hours where 85% of every electron used in Southwest Power Pool, a multi 14-ish state region, 85% of every electron came from coal, nuclear, and natural gas. And so, that's the reality of the extreme weathers. And since that event, SPP's done a number of things. We all have as utilities, hardening our resources, but one of the things is they've continued to increase the planning reserve margins. I mentioned the 3,000 megawatts of load. Back in Winter Storm Uri, I don't know the exact number, but it might have been about a 12% planning reserve margin. Well, today it's 17 and it's going to 19. And that's all to ensure that the utilities have enough accredited capacity of real generation, or generation that they can count on during these extreme events, to be there when they need it. And so that's been probably the biggest change that we've seen. And I think it's been really good. I think that's been a good focus. There's the right policies and checks and balances in place so that we as a utility industry continue to have our resources prepared for events that are becoming more and more of a challenge. And as you can imagine, these winter events in particular, it's really, really cold a lot of times, and it's really, really bad. It's really, really dangerous, and not having electricity is a real problem. And so that's why there's such an interest, a serious interest, and in serious investments to ensure that we can keep that reliability where we need it.
Thank you. Looks like we got one more question while you were answering that one. Is NPPD itself developing any renewable energy generation facilities?
Renewable energy, yes, we are pursuing. We are looking at renewable energy, but not that, to my knowledge, that we're going to develop. It would be in partnership with a developer, most likely, where we would take all the benefits out of it, whether it's the capacity value, the accredited capacity value, the energy, and the ancillary products that come from that generation resource. There's some economics in play. Where used to be really a lot of tax credits weren't available to public power districts, that led you into those public-private partnerships with those renewable developers. Again, from our perspective, it's what makes the most sense for the ratepayers in Nebraska regarding the arrangement. Do we build, own, and operate, or do we have a power purchase agreement with somebody that specializes in that space?
All right, thank you so much. I'll wait just a little bit longer here in case there are any last minute questions. And if anyone's interested in watching this back on YouTube, it will be uploaded in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, as I was saying that, we have one more question here. Residential storage allows load shedding. Has NPPD considered extending its irrigation load shedding program to residential storage?
We have, and that's, I mentioned earlier, we pursued, and I'm not exactly sure where it is right now, about a pilot with battery energy storage on the residential space to do that, to manage our peaks. And I do think those types of things, those types of opportunities will continue to be more and more of interest, and likely of more and more financial benefit. And because we have, as public power in Nebraska, we have to look at all the opportunities we can to be able to serve our customers in the least cost manner. And a lot of times, just like the irrigation load control program, that's a partnership with an end use customer that works. And we're hopeful that we can find the same opportunities on energy storage in the residential space. But to my knowledge today, it's not something that we're actively out having conversations about.
All right, thank you so much. And yeah, someone in chat, someone was saying this was a great webinar and was thanking you for your time. But yeah, thank you so much,
Yeah.
Shad, for your time. It was a great presentation. I'm glad to hear it. Like I said, this presentation should be uploaded on the Conservation Nebraska YouTube channel in the next couple of weeks in case anyone wants to watch it back. But yeah, thank you so much, Shad.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Anytime.